Darkness is definitely one of the more controversial 5th edition spells. New players get actively discouraged from using it, while the power gaming community sees it as one of the better tools in their arsenal. Typical arguments against Darkness are that it's a selfish spell that not only doesn't help the party, but actively impairs and debuffs everyone else's effectiveness in combat. On the other hand, power gamers and min-maxers swear by its effectiveness, many of them considering it one of the best ways to get advantage for their powerful character concepts. In this video, I will attempt to provide a realistic, objective assessment of this spell with both pros and cons that come with it. But before we delve deeper into the gloom, make sure you dim those like, subscribe and bell icon buttons down below and force the YouTube algorithm to operate in pitch black darkness, unable to suggest you anything but the videos from this channel only. Alright, let's get to it then. The most common way to use Darkness effectively is Warlock's Devil's Sight invocation, which allows the Warlock to see through up to 120 feet of magical darkness. Shadow Sorcerer subclass can also see through its own darkness when it casts it with sorcery points. Whatever the way to see through magical darkness is, it provides a clear upper hand. You see everything and everyone, while everybody else in most cases cannot see you. Page 194 of Player's Handbook specifically describes this situation where you are both unseen and attacking the creatures that cannot see you. They have disadvantage on attacks they make against you, while you have advantage on attacks against them. Of course, devils themselves can see you, they possess this special sight themselves. Other creatures also have special senses like blind sight, tremor sense or true sight, but these are not so common and are usually found in higher challenge rating stat blocks. The benefit of Darkness paired with an ability to see through it is undeniable. At a very low level, you are able to get a very reliable source of advantage that simultaneously inflicts disadvantage to most enemies you're fighting against. On top of that, you don't even have to use the disengage action if you want to get away from the enemy, as the attack of opportunity requires being able to see the fleeing opponent. You are effectively inflicting blinded condition to everyone and everything around you. Of course, this is a double-edged sword. If you are next to your party mates, they will effectively be blinded too. This is the problem a lot of people cite as a big reason to avoid this spell like a plague. In my experience, Darkness should strictly be used on characters that rely on ranged attacks and ranged abilities. You can use it on a more martially oriented character too, but these should also rely on ranged weapons such as bows and crossbows. Melee characters casting Darkness are a big problem though. First, they make all of their melee party mates blinded. Second, the enemy they're fighting against is effectively invisible too, so even their ranged party mates have disadvantage on attacks against those enemies as well. I have yet to see a melee character use Darkness effectively without seriously impairing the rest of the party. This selfish approach is kinda like less of an issue though, because as far as I can see it, the fact that other players don't get the same benefit as you is offset by the fact that you are a self-reliant character who performs at peak capacity in most situations, whether the enemy fails a saving throw against Fairy Fire, Entangle, Web or other such spells or not. In other words, you don't depend on other party mates providing advantage to you and inflicting disadvantage on attacks against you. You can provide it all for yourself, by yourself alone. Another reason some people look down upon Darkness is that it kind of shoehorns characters into a few very specific concepts. Mechanically, if you want to squeeze as much from it as possible, your options narrow down significantly. Basically, in most cases you have to be a half-elf or drow elf, warlock with Darkness spell plus Devil's Sight and Agonizing Blast invocations, plus Elven Accuracy feat, plus Eldritch Blast cantrip, which effectively allows you to roll 3d20 on all Eldritch Blast beams, significantly increasing your odds to hit a target and dealing high damage to them. If you don't want to cast Eldritch Blast like every generic warlock out there, you can be just a bit less generic hand crossbow plus sharpshooter feat plus crossbow expert feat, Gish character who relies on Darkness plus Devil's Sight combo as well. I've made videos about both of these, links are in the description. Now, you can flavor these kinds of characters in a million different variations. You don't have to be a stereotypical gloomy, edgy, lone lone wolf. You can be a cheerful and silly character, but at the end of the day, you're still doing the same thing in most combat encounters over and over and over again. However, we can apply that same argument to pretty much every other character out there. Evocation wizards spamming fireballs, barbarians with great weapon master feat and reckless attack feature, bards singing and sexually harassing every NPC out there, while druids keep casting conjure animals in just about every combat encounter. So, if you still want to use darkness for yourself, it's important to understand how to play your character optimally to avoid hurting your allies in the process. As a rule of thumb, all ranged characters are better off somewhere in the back to begin with. You specifically as a darkness user can even afford being a bit further away from the rest of the group, some 20 to 30 feet, because even if the DM ambushes you specifically, chances are you can survive one round of damage, cast darkness and just get the hell out of there while your frontliners rush at the enemy. The situations where your ranged character's darkness hurts the rest of the party more than it helps are really few and far in between. Let's look at a few examples. In this case, a 10 feet wide, 10 feet tall labyrinth has a passage where some constructs attack the party. At first glance, you may think that darkness will be a problem here because everything is so cramped. But even in a 6-player party, your frontliners can engage the enemy, other ranged characters and casters can linger in the back, and you can move just back and forth, shooting eldritch blasts or hand crossbow bolts with advantage on your turn, and then moving away just enough for the party to be able to see their enemies. Sure, the enemies do have half cover from your own party mates, but that's a problem you would have anyway, with or without darkness, so that automatic advantage only helps you hit that +2 AC enemy easier. Bigger rooms like this observatory/laboratory offer even more wiggle room because you can safely tuck yourself in a corner, obstructing nobody's vision with your darkness while everyone else engages with the enemy normally. The only situations where darkness will really hurt the party are small, say 15 by 15 by 15 rooms full of enemies with special senses like blind sight or tremor sense with no doors and windows. For example, a claustrophobic death trap filled with black puddings. Though if something like that really happens to you, your party will have much worse problems to deal with than darkness, in all honesty. Now that I think about it, this dark ooze of death sprayed all over the thumbs up, subscribe and bell icon buttons just may be what the YouTube algorithm needs to serve you more of my videos in the future. So get to it. In my opinion, the problematic nature of darkness spell, at least from the mechanical standpoint, is overblown and overrated. Yes, melee characters making everyone friend and foe blinded can be an issue, but for ranged characters who don't want to be on the front line in the first place, it is easily one of the better defensive and offensive spells at the same time, at least on lower levels. Of course, the spell does imply you have some way of seeing through magical darkness, be it Warlock's Devil Sight Invocation, Shadow Sorcerer's Special Eyes of the Dark feature, or something else that allows you to see through magical darkness. This does pigeonhole your character customization options significantly, forcing you to go for select few mechanical options in order to gain the maximum benefits. From a role-playing perspective, it also does have a higher likelihood of same character concepts being repeated over and over again, but that is beyond the scope of this video. I may rant about it some other day. Until then, the video script text file for this video is available for download on my Patreon page under the Fireball tier. It's not mandatory, it's 100% optional, especially in these troubled, globally challenging economic times, but if you find the Patreon perks worth the trouble, worth your time and worth your money, consider supporting my efforts there. Special shout out to all of my current patrons, thank you for your continued support. The polls for new Mechanics Mondays video topics are dropping on my Patreon soon, so if you want to cast your votes, chuck a buck at me there, link is in the description below. With everything said and done, MinMax Munchkin out, talk to you soon.